they have two public hearings before this item. I know staff wants them to move this item to the beginning. So if they do, you'll be lucky. I'm going to say probably a couple hours. Yeah. To be on the safe side. Yeah.
Yeah, my problem is I got a lot of things to do. And sitting here waiting for 2 hours for something to come up is
Yeah, exactly.
a waste of time. We all have.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not getting paid.
You know Jeff Arbel? I would talk to him because he's the one that wants to get the item moved to the beginning. So,
What interest will he have? What interest will he have as opposed to?
well, because he's here with staff, code enforcement, regarding the noise and all that.
So they would have to be paid extra hours if they stayed till
Yeah,
11 o'clock. Is that what you're saying?
No. He just, I don't know why he wants it moved. I don't know if he has other obligations or what. But he needs to ask David the guy, to do that.
Is David a guy? Does he ask David?
No, he hasn't, because David's not here yet. And that, because it would be up to David and then the rest of the commission if they do move.
So they'll discuss this
At the agenda part, approval of the agenda. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. They're on the back side of the building. Hey, what's Alvo gonna do? Oh, okay. Huh? Well, yeah, but you can always move them around. And besides, Richard Wiesbert wants to move too, because he wants to speak on it. He just want to wait 2 hours. Okay. Did you find parking okay?
Well, that was the problem. There was no parking.
Oh, okay, because they forgot to put the reserve signs out. I told them like at 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
And they were going to do their best, but.
David and I got the last 2 spots.
Oh, good, okay.
We were able to move.
Okay, so he's on his way.
Yeah.
Okay, oh, there he is.
If everybody could please take their seats, we're going to start the meeting. I would like to call to order the meeting of the West Hollywood Planning Commission of Thursday, June 1st, 2017. Jeff Obel, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Oh, could you come up to the podium and thank you.
Everybody please stand, put your hand on your heart.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. David, can we please take roll call?
Good evening. Commissioner Jones?
Here.
Here. Commissioner Valero? Here. Commissioner Elchel?
Here.
Vice Chair Buckner?
Here?
Chair Lagai?
Here.
And we have a quorum.
Thank you so much. So now we will go to item 4, approval of the agenda. I have a request. If we could move item 11A, the new business regarding the update for the Catch Restaurant to right after consent calendar, but before our public hearings. Is that okay with, are there any objections to that?
No, we're fine with that.
So with that change, is there a motion for?
I'll move it with that change.
Thank you so much. And there's a second?
I'll second.
There we go. Everybody vote.
That's only 6.
Only 6 we're missing. There we go.
Need help?
Thank you so much. And the motion passes?
Motion passes unanimous.
Thank you. Move on to item 5, approval of the minutes. Is there a motion?
Move approval?
I'll second that if I can find my button.
There you go.
I made the motion, I guess.
Where's it?
Oh, you hit on the
It's
floor.
under your stomach.
Come on.
Okay.
And motion passes unanimous.
Thank you very much. Now, the staff has informed me, and it looks like on the agenda, the item 10C, the Sunset Strip offsite signage policy will be continued to our next meeting. I'm sure there might be people here in the audience who are here to possibly speak on that item, so I would encourage you, with staff's permission, assuming I'm not making a mistake, if you would like to please speak in the public comment section coming up, if that's okay with everybody here. And with that, we'll give everybody a moment to, I guess, turn in any slips if they want to speak, but item 6, public comment. Do we have any slips yet?
No, not at this
So
time.
let's give everybody 2 or 3 minutes to see if, should we, 60 seconds,
It's going to be on June 15th, so I'll have an opportunity.
just in case anyone's here and they want to.
Why don't you announce it's coming on June?
There'll also be public comment at the end, David.
What's that?
There'll also be public comment at the end.
And there'll also be public comment at the end if you want to talk then. Okay, so, and you can also come on June 15th, which is our next meeting, to discuss that as well. So with that, we will move on to item 7, the director's report.
Good evening, John Kehoe, Assistant Director for Community Development. I only have 2 items quickly to talk about on the next City Council agenda. There's an item on the agenda addressing the city's capital and special projects program, and that's a staff item that talks about projects such as West Hollywood Park Phase 2, the AIDS Monument, the Street Media Project, the Metro Project, and the Sunset Spectacular. So if you're interested in city projects, that's an item you might want to look at. And the other item I want to mention that's on the next calendar of City Council on Monday is the city's budget. So of course everyone would want to take a look at the city's budget, and that's on the next agenda. And that's all I have for you tonight.
Thank you so much. With that, we will move to items from commissioners. Commissioner Jones?
Nothing at this time, thanks.
Commissioner DeLuccio?
Nothing at this time.
Commissioner Alchel?
Nothing, thank you.
Vice Chair Buckner?
Not tonight.
Commissioner Cavallero? And Commissioner Hoopengarner?
Not at this time.
Thank you. And with that, we will move on to consent calendar, and we have one item, which I believe Commissioner Cavallero has a comment on. I was informed in advance, so would you,
Then it won't be consent.
I mean, yeah, I think he just wants, I don't know what the procedure is. Is it okay if he comments on it, or, okay. Go ahead.
I wasn't a commissioner at the May 4th meeting, but I was here for that meeting, and saw what happened with this whole art on construction fence issue. And I feel like some of the issues that need to be addressed were not addressed by the commissioners. The conversation during the presentation went towards artistic branding. And artistic branding, as it was explained, can incorporate logos or images of Rolex was used, for instance. And I did a little bit of research on this, and this falls into the creative signage requirement by the Planning Commission, which is a fairly costly and lengthy process, and the building permit is dependent on passing the creative signage approval process. The community, and there were comments made that said that the art on construction fencing was going to become an undue burden to the developer, but this only applies to projects that are over 10,000 square feet and require a demolition permit. So these are large-scale projects, not small-scale projects. I know that Arts and Cultural Affairs has streamlined the process. They've already collected or identified 47 muralists and artists that can, basically, a developer can go to the list, pick an artist, and fast-track the whole process, and the fee only costs $117. And I understand that the creative signage fee is in the thousands, if not more than that. I wasn't able to confirm that today. So I'd like us to discuss this again, because I don't believe that this creates an undue burden on the developer, and I think it does create an asset for the community that we are currently kind of pushing aside. And really, this all came out of, I believe that this all came out of what happened on Sunset Boulevard with the construction that happened over the years. And really, that construction fence at times went into the middle of Sunset Boulevard. They really paid very little attention to the community. And the developer really didn't seem to be engaged with the community in a meaningful way. I do believe that art on a construction fence will force the developer to maintain that fence, because that's part of their requirement. And in that way, give something meaningful back to the community that the community can live with during the time of this inconvenience during the construction.
Commissioner, I need one clarification from staff on this. Thank you for your comments. Now, I understand it's 10,000 square feet or more of frontage. Is it and a demolition permit, or and if somebody just wants a demolition permit, is that also require them to put a fence with artwork, even if it's less than 10,000 square feet?
Yeah, any project, it's and or, so any project that requires a demolition permit and also would require a construction fence per the California state standards would be required.
So it can be less than 10,000 square feet, and thank you for your clarifying. I mean, this is new knowledge to me about the cost involved, but so if somebody, I don't know, demolished something and they just needed a fence that was 500 square feet, they did a demolition, they would have to put art on that fence, correct?
Those smaller projects may not be required to install construction fencing, so it's typically, or a demolition permit.
They may not be required?
May not or will not?
They may not.
May not is a passive word. Will is an absolute word. So that was my, Commissioner, that was my hang-up on this whole thing about it read whether 10,000 square feet or a demolition permit. That's where I got hung up. But I appreciate your comments, and based on that, I'm willing to relook this, and maybe the city attorney can tell us.
So Commissioner Altschul has a comment.
Well, Lauren, would you, if that were a prelude to a motion for reconsideration, would you tell us, please, what the requirements are for a motion for reconsideration?
It technically wouldn't be a reconsideration, because last time all you did was direct staff to come back with a resolution, so there was never a final decision made. The question on your agenda tonight is only whether this resolution reflects what you directed last time. If you want to do something different, you would have to direct staff to notice a new public hearing and bring it back at a later date. You could do it that way.
So would we be calling a vote as to whether or not to do that, or how does that? What's the proper procedure?
You have one commissioner who's asked.
Right.
If there's a general consensus to do that, then yes, I would make a motion and a second and take a vote as to whether to.
But would it only be the commissioners that directed this to come? There's 5 commissioners. I think it's only
that akin to a motion for reconsideration.
Right.
Staff responded to your request by bringing back the resolution.
Right.
That was the vote to bring it back. And so you're not reconsidering that vote, you're just deciding whether or not to hold off on adopting this resolution tonight.
We're reconsidering our vote to bring back that.
Right, but so that was taken care of by staff putting it on the agenda.
But we're reversing our,
Yeah, right, you would want to take another look at it and have a whole new public hearing.
Can we just table this evening? Just table this resolution, not take action on it? And then direct staff to reschedule a public hearing again?
that's what she's
to-
saying.
That's what she
Yes.
said.
So that would be, do we
Yes.
need to make a motion?
I would do that.
That'd be my motion.
It's also on the consent calendar, so we have
So we're
to,
pulling it from consent.
Yeah.
Okay. Really rehearing it.
So
Is
that's
there a
what-
second on that motion?
I think Ruggiero, in effect, is making a motion to take another look.
Yes.
So technically, so
Okay,
Want
then,
to second the motion? I made a motion,
you want to second it?
yeah.
Well,
You have to
second?
tap on the screen.
I don't see where.
You hit on the floor?
Request a motion on the right side.
So we'll take no action on this.
Any further discussion?
Nope.
So the motion is to direct staff to notice a new public hearing?
Correct, and
on the
we'll
text
discuss it again.
amendment, to discuss
That's
it
your
again.
motion, right, Donald?
And it's also, I just want to be clear, if this is going to come back, that you gave us good input this evening, but I really want to hear that input from staff reflected in a staff report, what the cost would be for that, and also if it's a demolition only, what the cost would be. Because if it's just nominal, then it's going to look less blight on those boards, I would be in favor of something like that.
Without getting into too much discussion this evening, I just want to clarify, I think there may be a misunderstanding about the creative sign permit. That is not the process that would be followed for this. So those fees are not really the issue, but I think if the commission wishes to reconsider the direction, the direction that's reflected here about considering creative branding and having it be optional, that those are certainly things that could be discussed when we come back.
So,
Well, why don't you go? So I think, given the items that Commissioner Caballero has raised, and not to say that there's any confusion now, but I guess our understanding might be just a little up in the air. Our request would be to come back. Let's put this on for another date, and then if staff could clarify specifically the items that the Commissioner raised, and for me, I just want to know what is the net impact to the project developer and for what types of projects, for what
and
size.
I agree, because I think part of what we were objecting to and why we wanted to make it optional rather than required, had to do with the cost that it would have on the developer, especially on a smaller project.
And I'm doing it out of courtesy, since we also have two new commissioners here, and we can take another look at it. So
if there's...
Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
I just would like to possibly suggest, and I love your idea, and we're the creative city, let's show some creativity here. Perhaps we could incorporate comments from the Arts Council with this process and see, how we could work together to make this an even more productive, creative option for our city.
I think the items before us are limited to the scope of these planning and land use items. So that's something we can, I think, discuss when the item comes before us again. But let's
move on.
Let's move on. Let's vote on it and we can discuss it.
before we
at that
vote, I
time.
think what we're saying is it'd be good to have that information.
Correct.
If we cannot act on it, it would be helpful to have that, which we used to have as exhibits, that type of information to give us more information to make our decisions on.
Perfect.
So I'll vote yes on that.
And unless there are any other comments or questions, let's call a question.
And the motion passes unanimous. It'll be brought back at a future date as a public hearing.
Thank you very much. And with that, we will jump forward to item 11A, 8715 Melrose Avenue, regarding Catch Restaurant, the 6-month update. Do we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair Agai and members of the Commission. I'm Adrian Gaia with the city's current plan division. I'm going to give the 6-month review on the Catch restaurant. In the approval for the restaurant, there was a requirement that there be a staff level review by the director at 3, 6, and 12 months. At the 3-month review, Catch management agreed to several things to change how they were operating. They agreed to reposition all speakers on the patio and reduce the base of the speakers, agreed to hire extra security to deal with valet noise and paparazzi, cap all audio processors by zone to reduce all speaker sound production, post and enforce additional signs asking patrons to be quiet and respect the neighbors, hire a local acoustical engineering specialist to do an additional sound study, and they agreed to conduct sound checks by standing in the driveways of residential properties on Rangeley Drive. Since the 3-month review in January, the owners of the restaurant held a neighborhood meeting on February 22nd at the establishment. In attendance were approximately 25 people along with city staff. The main concerns included traffic congestion on Melrose and San Vicente, valet operations, parking, and noise from the restaurant. Based on community input, Catch management implemented the following additional measures. Hired private traffic control 7 nights a week. Hired West Hollywood parking enforcement permanently Friday and Saturday nights. Catch management does a neighborhood and facility walk 3 times per night, 7 days a week. The audio speakers on Melrose Terrace of the restaurant are completely turned off at 10 p.m. Added 4 more parking spaces to the valet zone and have trained staff to move cars to the front to keep cars out of the intersection. Provided a pickup drop-off area for Uber and Lyft. A valet parking moved to the garage after 12 a.m. They hired a sound engineer that visited the restaurant multiple times and did external tests to develop recommendations. All of the recommendations on adjusting volumes, frequencies, song types and mix, speaker direction, and hours for the exterior terrace were all incorporated. These measures were made in direct response to surrounding residents' concerns. Our code compliance staff has indicated that the additional meter spaces have improved the valet operations by taking cars off the street and controlling Uber and Lyft vehicles. The Code Compliance Division has received 5 calls since January regarding noise from the restaurant. One of these calls was verified as a violation on May 27th. City staff has met with the restaurant management to discuss the noise concerns, and we did talk to them about how significant the concerns were and how we needed to make sure the problem did get resolved. They have agreed to changes to minimize sound from the terrace on the Melrose side that include additional sound enclosures to prevent sound from escaping as identified by the acoustic engineer. Staff will need to evaluate the final design to make sure it complies with the zoning code requirements. We'll have another review in 6 months and see if these measures are working. The restaurant is committed to resolving the noise issues and has been actively trying to address all concerns raised. If there continue to be noise issues, we can call for a hearing to officially modify their conditions. The restaurant management is aware that this is something we can do. I'm available for any questions along with the city's code compliance manager.
I have a question. Sure. May 27th, can you tell us more detail about the violation, please, and what you guys found?
Good evening, Jeff Wobble, Code Compliance Manager. Officer Anna Hernandez received a complaint that noise was audible on Rangeley. I'm going to say it was directly across the street. I forget the address. She was on Rangeley Avenue. She could not hear the music or any noise from the restaurant. And then she got another call from the complainant, who then invited her into his backyard. And at that point, she was able to actually hear it in the backyard, tell that what type of music it was, what song it was, and everything.
You can tell what song it was?
By the bass and everything. It wasn't like, she said it wasn't blaring, but she could hear the music.
Understood. Commissioner Alter?
What time was that again?
It was about 12:55 a.m.
12:55 a.m.
There were previously extensive sound attenuation studies at Soho House several years ago. Have the equivalent studies been done here?
In speaking with Catch, they have hired Vennek Lawson initially to do the sound study, which required measures that they've implemented. Since then, Vennek Lawson has come out and done additional studies, additional analysis, but not a formal study, and provided recommendations to Catch that they've now also implemented as part of their operations.
Were these studies equivalent to those done at Soho House?
I can't compare what was done at Soho.
Can you look into that?
Yes.
Any other questions or comments?
I wanted to ask our city attorney, I know that we have set the next review 6 months. It was 3 months and then 6 months. Considering that there have been such continued complaints, is it appropriate, or can we set tonight another 3 months rather than waiting 6 months so that we can stay on top of the issues? Is that something we can do?
Well, we can't amend the conditions in their permit without a hearing. I think you could ask staff to report back to you more information, as they have been doing. I wouldn't necessarily call it a formal review because the formal reviews are in their conditions, but if there's information you want to report back as time goes on, I think
Okay.
staff could do that.
I would like that.
Commissioner Alsham?
What is the status of the compliance or the use of the requirement that the parking be on the San Vicente, under the underground at San Vicente rather than on Melrose?
Are you referring to the valet on Melrose?
There was, as to my recollection,
supposed
a
to move it.
requirement that the parking be on the San Vicente underground entrance rather than...
It wasn't a condition of the project. At the approval for the alcohol request, Catch mentioned that they would pick up cars and drop off cars in the valet. Since it wasn't a condition, after the approval, they subsequently came in and asked if they can have the pickup and drop off along Melrose, and it was approved. Since then, it's been on Melrose, and initially it was 8 meter spots, and it got expanded to 4 more meter spots to help address the traffic that was building up at the corner of San
Wasn't there
Vicente.
subsequently volunteered on their behalf using San Vicente after 10 p.m. or some such hour?
At midnight, they would at that point only use the garage inside.
And has that taken place?
Yes,
So now, after midnight, they exclusively use drop-off and deliver on San Vicente
correct.
from the underground
Inside the garage.
inside the garage?
From midnight on, it's Uber and Lyft that are basically all the traffic that are in front of the restaurant.
Commissioner DeLucia?
Who approved the,
That again, Jeff?
go ahead.
Say again?
After midnight, the traffic that's in front of the restaurant are the Uber and Lyft drivers and taxis and such.
That's on Melrose.
Correct.
But you and I have to go underground.
Valet operations are inside, correct?
But Uber and Lyft, that makes the most noise.
Correct. We can't, there's no way for us to we actually added some drop-off spaces, drop zones we're calling them, for the Uber and Lyft drivers.
Has that abated the noise?
Somewhat, it's gotten better, but it's still there's still some honking and such from the traffic.
I've been there twice. My observation was that the operation inside was quite calm and quite well run.
What time were you there?
Kind of early. I eat early.
5 o'clock?
I got there both times at 7 and left by 9:30. The operations inside were quite well run. It was packed. I was told that they expected over 700 people on both of those evenings, and it was still very well contained. But the outside was a mess, and mostly the rented cars would zigzag and come in and out and be loud and be quite disturbing to the rest of the traffic. And the valets had apparently no control. At least visually, to me, they had no control. And the last time I was there was probably 2 months ago. Has that gotten to your?
That's what the parking enforcement officer is for, that their business is hired to keep the Uber and Lyft drivers, I'm going to say the shared drivers, keep them moving, so that
The last 60 days, do you think that's gotten any better?
Over the last 4 or 5 months, it's gradually gotten better, yes. It's gotten much better.
You mentioned approval. Who approved the approval of the parking operation was not by the planning commission, correct?
Correct.
Is that standard, that it would be separate from the CUP? Well, in this case, they've had an MCUP, correct?
Usually.
It would be.
It's a valet business license, correct?
Okay, so it's done separately. I don't know, every time I go by there, and I don't live that far from there, but I do live outside the 500 foot radius. I want to make that clear. It still looks pretty chaotic. And I know that you've added some, they've hired some city enforcement, is that patrol enforcement, and probably between the valet operation, it encompasses a number of people. So I think, in a sense, that sort of aggravated the situation by adding, I mean, it hasn't, to me, it hasn't made the operation more smooth. I know the attempt was to, by adding more personnel, employees, it seems like it's gotten more chaotic to me.
Well, the valet operators are to help things along and to help with Uber and Lyft. They actually bring the Uber and Lyft cars into the valet drop-off zone, which is normally just limited for valet drop-off and pickup. But because there's such a, I think I understand it was like 60% of their patrons come in Uber or Lyft after a certain hour. So the valet operators try to direct them in and get them out as soon as possible. And then the valet operators, for people that are dropping their cars off, take the car and go from there. So they're kind of working to the valet drivers and then the Uber and Lyft drivers.
But it's taking, along Melrose, it takes the whole parking strip over there. Melrose is just one lane in each direction to drive, but it's taking the whole parking. Is that elsewhere in the city that they've taken up, that a business has taken up so much of a street for their parking operations instead of trying to contain it, inside their property?
One Oak is a nightclub on Sunset that has these issues later at night. I honestly haven't been out in the field myself in quite a while.
But this isn't a nightclub, right?
It isn't a nightclub, but it does have a higher capacity, has a lot of people coming. No, I can't say that there's actually any particular business that I can think of off the top of my head that has quite the valet impact that this particular business
Maybe if I can
does.
ask one more question. So do you feel that, I think it has, I believe it's not totally under control, but do you feel that progress has been made to that end?
Absolutely, yes.
And do you have any other ideas that you guys have in mind to try to make it more orderly?
We're adding another car service, we're gonna call it drop zone on the other side of Melrose for the patrons that would be coming west or eastbound, so that they can drop their patrons over there and move along. A lot of times what they'll try to do is they'll try to move around and do a U-turn. That's why we made them put the cones along the center divider so that people cannot do that. So they have to move forward and go east. Hopefully the second drop zone will help.
Okay, so that's one issue going on with the business. The other issue is the noise of the establishment itself, and I think I've heard that that there's a plan in place to address that, but it hasn't been implemented yet?
Correct.
Okay, and that should alleviate the noise to the north.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to hear what people have to say this evening.
North or
but
to
it's
the south?
The south, to the
The noise
noise to the south.
South elevation. Right.
So okay, so this is still a work in progress.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hoopengarner wanted to.
Okay.
Sorry.
I just did a walk through this evening on the way here so that I hadn't been to the restaurant, so I could see. And I read the conditional use permit, so I have some questions. One of which, 6.17 said that the speakers should be installed as low to the ground as possible. All of the speakers that I saw were well above 7 feet in the air, especially on the south side. So I was wondering about that. In addition, the requirements for limiters on the sound, my question is, have those limiters been tested? And are they enforced? I mean, a limiter is a thing that anyone with a Google engine can go figure out how to unlimit. So, and I've heard from neighbors have communicated with me and said that, at night the volume goes up. So somebody is cranking the volume up. And so I guess the question is, have those limiters been actively tested?
Not to my knowledge, no. We go by the reasonable person standard. If we can hear it off the site in the residential neighborhood, that's violation. So it needs to be at a level of volume that is not allowing it to be heard in the
So
residential
4 days
neighborhood.
before this hearing, there was a violation.
Correct.
And was the citation written?
Yes.
Okay. Because I've had communication from neighbors who said they've called out code enforcement, and code enforcement has told them, we're working with Catch, so therefore we're not going to write anything up.
We've issued 2 warnings and we've issued a citation.
Okay.
There have been 5 calls since January 1st of this year.
Okay.
We are in this so that's 1 call a month.
Okay. And so...
And not to mention, we also actually inspect proactively every weekend and every night that I have an officer working, which is 5 nights a week.
Okay. So help me understand, I'm sorry, I'm new to this, the valet thing. So the valet being underground was not part of the CUP, so we can't add that. But we've essentially given away 12 parking spaces in our city to the valet. Now, we're in fact enabling extensive street side valet by giving city parking spaces and taking them away from other commercial businesses to give them to this single business. Help me understand that process and the decision and who decides to give away 12 parking spaces in the city to a single business.
The decision, well, basically, every business is entitled to obtain a valet license, and they pay for each space that is used for the pickup and drop-off zone. So it's not like it's given away. They actually pay the city fees for the year to use each space. The fees vary from Sunset Boulevard to Santa Monica, Melrose, east side of Santa Monica, and everything. In essence, the 12 spaces, 8 of them, because it's parallel parking there, I mean diagonal parking, if it was a normal parking situation where it was like, parallel parking, not diagonal parking, it would be a lot less spaces. Because the way the parking is set up there, they need more parking spaces. The 4 spaces that were added were for not for valet, it's for the shared drivers pickup drop-off zone, so that they can go there. So it's basically 8 spaces. We have Craig's up the street, further to the west on the south side, that has, I think, 5 spaces or 6 spaces. Each business that has an operation on the street takes vehicles, say people come to go for dinner that evening, that valet is moving a multitude of cars, dozens of cars. Whereas 12 spaces, they probably put like 70 to 80 cars, 100 cars in that garage at nighttime. So they're taking vehicles off the street where people would normally be looking for parking.
Unless the valet was underground.
Sure. Right.
Okay.
I have another question for code enforcement. So does every call regarding, if someone calls and says, hey, I hear something, is that logged, and are we... So from January till now, there has only been 5 phone calls?
That's correct. We have a system called Public Stuff. Every call we receive, we keep, it's logged in, and the complainant's call back. If it comes in a time when staff is working, the staff will call the complainant back at that moment and go out and attempt to inspect.
Okay. Commissioner Jones hasn't had a chance, and then Commissioner Aljo.
I don't have any questions for code enforcement, but I'd be interested to know whether it's from staff or from members of the public during public comment. First, do we have any information about like what percentage of people who are visiting the restaurant park valet and what percentage use rideshare? No.
We don't, but cash management is here. We can ask them.
Okay, that'd be great. And I guess I just would also love to know from, during public comment if anyone has an observation about, I've been by the site a number of times. I don't live in that part of West Hollywood, but I'd be interested to know if the complaints are more about, like, from the valet, from the rideshare services, or a combination of both.
Okay. Commissioner Aljo?
Going back to your statement about putting a drop-off station for people that are coming from the west going east, is there provision for a person to see them crossing safely from the east, from the south side of the street to the north side of the street?
You mean for the restaurant to have a crossing guard per se?
Yes.
I don't know if that's been discussed.
I think that needs to be discussed, because with the Uber and Lyft people treating this as if it's a race course and an obstacle course, even though there's a signal at San Vicente and Melrose, I believe that the restaurant should provide a safety guard for those people, their customers, that are going to have to make that crossing.
We could definitely ask them to do that.
No, I think we should require them to do that. That is a hazard.
Before you go on, I have a clarification. Chair,
Yes.
I'm not texting. A couple of people have texted me that they're not hearing the staff. People are actually watching this meeting, and they're saying that staff is not speaking into the mic. I'm sorry. I just want to
okay.
bring that to your attention.
I can definitely speak into the microphone.
Are there
There
any
you
questions
go.
to staff at this time? Because we have a list of public speakers that I'd love to get to. If not, we will open the public hearing, and we will start with, well, first of all, are there any disclosures regarding this item?
Other than the fact I went to walk around the restaurant, no.
Commissioner Cavalier? None for me.
Other than the fact that I've eaten there twice and have recited my observations.
Commissioner Lucci?
I have no disclosures. I haven't been there yet to eat.
Commissioner Jones?
No disclosures.
Thank you. And with that, we will start open the public hearing. Speakers will have 3 minutes to speak. Richard Giesbrit, followed by Don Zudema, sorry.
Richard Giesbread, President of West Hollywood West Residents Association. The department process has managed this disaster that we have here. It's a visual mess from the outset. There have been the traffic problems you've discussed, and of course the noise. Despite serious neighborhood concerns, the city failed a critical review of the acoustical consultant's report. The building owner's efforts, in fact, did more than the city did, because the building owner, at his cost, as well as the restaurant owners, built a 7-foot tall glass wall around the space. You should be aware of the fact that up on Sunset Strip, people have 10 and 12-foot glass walls to contain noise. The acoustical consultant said the neighborhood would hear nothing. Obviously, he's wrong. In the last director's hearing at 3 months, the director addressed a single complaint, which was actually a petition of 24 people south of the restaurant complaining about the noise. It's been reported to me by several people that they don't call code compliance anymore because they feel it's ineffective. Unfortunately, there have been problems in the neighborhood with code compliance elsewhere. It seems every day there's noise trespass. I walk by the restaurant all the time, and I hear it. And it's often people yelling and screaming, loud voices, things of that nature, or people talking loudly at the valet stand. It seems every single day. Homeowners can hear it from within their homes. They can hear it in their backyards. So where are they to go for solitude? They're not going to put on earphones. They're not going to turn up the TV. They're not going to you can't ask them to leave their house to get away from noise. Before you approve new requests, you're responsible to protect the existing immediate neighbors, be they residents or commercial entities. They've invested in the city, they're here, they need defense. You can't continue to improve projects without sufficient information. You have to have facts, you have to understand the scope, you have to ask substantive questions, you require reports and professional advice. You need testable standards, and you haven't had them. You need to demand them. Each one of you needs to work towards a remedy on this problem. Otherwise, it's going to stand for decades.
The time has expired.
That's just the alarm hasn't gone off, but thank you for your comments. And if the alarm doesn't go off for the next person, we'll just politely notify you. Don Zudema, followed by Karen Kildow.
Good evening, Commissioners, and thank you for the time to speak to you this evening. My name's Don Zudema. I'm a resident of the city of West Hollywood. I'm also a business owner for over 34 years in the city of West Hollywood. And I'm also speaking this evening as a member of the Board of Directors of the West Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. I support Catch Restaurant, and I want to give the restaurant team credit for listening to the neighborhood and working to make their operations as carefully managed and discreet as possible. Traffic on Melrose is a given, but the Uber drop-off lane, which has come up this evening in front of Catch, I believe has gone a long way towards improving the circulation of vehicles at the corner of San Vicente. I do think extending that lane for ride-sharing services would be a helpful improvement, and I ask the Commission to consider that request. The sound enclosure plan to further reduce noise from customer conversations on the roof is another example of Catch's good faith efforts. They've, I think, shown attention to the neighborhood issues. They're trying to improve them and to be responsible operators who truly want to be a good neighbor. I can tell you they are involved in our community, they're good corporate citizens, and they're strong and active members of our chamber. And I would ask that we should support good operators like Catch, and I request the Commission to do the same this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Kildow, followed by Becca Reardon.
Hi, my name is Karen Kildow. I live right down the street in West Hollywood. And I wanted to come out here and support Catch because I've been going there since it opened. And I, as a patron, have always felt like it's extremely well run. And I actually feel that the parking situation is one of the most smooth and safe that I've experienced going to multiple restaurants and nightclubs in the area. I feel like you get in and get out very quickly, and it filters the people through really effectively. And I also have seen many times that inside is well run and the noise is very reasonable, and I think they do a good job at keeping it very reasonable with it, considering how many people are in there. So I think it's well run, and I've seen more positive impact and buzz and excitement around Catch than almost any other restaurant in West Hollywood, and I think that it's a really valuable part of the community.
Thank you. Becca Reardon, followed by Darren Goldberg.
Hi there. My name is Becca Reardon. I also live in the neighborhood. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk. It's exciting to be a voice in this community. I'm here today to also support Catch Restaurant and its existence at where it is currently in West Hollywood. I strongly believe that the benefits that Catch brings to my community and our community outweigh the complaints that I've heard here today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Darren Goldberg, followed by Milena Christina.
Thank you for the time. I'm here to support Catch, actually. I feel like they've come a long way in the last 6 months, and Mark has been real hospitable if I've had problems or getting a hold of him, which usually you don't have in businesses like that at such a stature. And I feel like, while not perfect right now, in the 6 months, it's been a big difference. And I think that they've gone a long way for making it better for the community, and I think there's a lot of positives that have come along with it. And I think it could have been a lot worse, and we have a great owner that's trying to work with the neighborhood and listen to our complaints and do what he can. And that's basically all I have to say. Thank you.
We didn't get your name, I'm sorry.
Darren Goldberg.
Thank you.
I live on Rangeley.
Thank you. Milena Christina, followed by Eduardo Citronblum.
Hello and good evening. My name is Milena Christina. I am a 15-year resident here in West Hollywood. I've owned a past business here in 12 years, the gym Lift West Hollywood, previously Train. I now very proudly sell homes in West Hollywood for Sotheby's International Realty. I love our city. I think it's a great city to live and do business in. Currently, I have to disclose, I'm also the vice chair of the West Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. Too often in our community, businesses ignore a lot of residential concerns and refuse to work in good faith with our neighbors. I'm sure we can recount a lot of instances. What's been very refreshing is Catch has been extremely proactive in their approach, sharing 24-hour contact information for on-site staff and making meaningful changes to improve circumstances along Melrose. Catch has adjusted their rideshare pickup points. They've also opened their doors to many neighbors so we can see that the restaurant operations hum, as many people have attested here tonight. That's very well run. The new sound enclosure proposed for the guest check-in area on the roof is also further evidence of Catch's desire to be good operators and their agreement to continue to pursue further studies further shows how earnest and honest they are in making sure that they get along with everyone in the neighborhood. You know, it's never a perfect rollout when a new restaurant, especially a hot restaurant, opens in our densely populated city. But I have to say that Catch has worked very hard to be a responsible member of our neighborhood, and they really continue to do that. The Commission should recognize all the work that Catch has completed to date and allow this great business to continue to thrive and contribute to our local economy. Last few words, I also have to disclose, I also sit on the board of Visit West Hollywood, and I think we really must recognize the contributions that Catch is bringing to our community, the recognition they bring to our city, and the support for our position as a global travel destination, which is huge, as a result of the worldwide coverage and press they receive on a regular basis. They support Visit West Hollywood branding that talks of our spectacular rooftop decks as one of the draws of our great city. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Eduardo Citronblum, followed by Toby Carnes.
Hi, my name is Eduardo Citronblum. I live at 8713 Rangeley Avenue. Before anything else, I am the person right in front of Catch. And I do want to confirm something regarding what they were saying, that a lot of us have not been calling code compliance because we have been working with both the city and with the owners of the property and of the restaurant very closely to try to improve the situation. So the code compliance count is inaccurate because it doesn't reflect actual code violations. It reflects the fact that we have been in this process for 6 months, and everybody has shown a willingness to be cooperative, and we've been, especially myself, I can speak only for myself, I've been working closely, and instead of complaining, I've been working with Mark here, who has been helpful and available to me. So that's all I wanted to clarify regarding the code. But the moment that a couple of weeks ago I decided that this was going nowhere and I continue to have sleepless nights on a weekly basis, I began calling, and within 2 calls, the first time the person wasn't available, and the second time they came, and there it is. So if I could just take a couple of minutes to read what I've written, I would appreciate it. So when I heard the report for the 3-month review, my heart sank. I was astonished to not hear anything reported to you about the 21-person petition from Rangeley neighbors, about the 8-minute video I compiled from 3 months of blatant noise violations, and about the numerous times that me and my neighbors had called the sheriff and code enforcement regarding music and other noise coming from Catch. So I'm here today to tell you in person. My house is the closest in distance to Catch, and it is the property mentioned in the sound study that was presented to you as the place where no audible sound would be heard coming from the restaurant. Any of you who know me by now or anyone who has spent any time in my house at night will know that this study was flat out wrong. I can plainly hear music and conversations from my bedroom on a daily basis, and 2 or 3 nights out of each week, I am woken up by either screaming, loud music, or honking. The noise from Catch has become the soundtrack of my life, every single day of the week, every week of the year, until 2 a.m. The fact that noise is audible from my property is known by everyone I've been in contact with, from the property owners and managers of Catch, the owners of the property, and the various city officials I've been in contact with. Code enforcement officers have verified this fact many times, and I have provided plenty of evidence for the problem. Just 20 seconds. The question is not whether or not Catch violates the noise ordinance, but why the city hasn't done anything about it yet. To this day, not a single citation has been issued. The truth is that Catch Restaurant, by its lack of appropriate sound insulation, is structurally incapable of not violating the sound ordinances, even under normal operating conditions. If the premise of the conditional permit was, among others, that sound traveling from Catch wouldn't be audible from the nearest residences, isn't it your responsibility to ensure that this is the case? I believe that finding and imposing a structural solution that actually works, together with a strong code enforcement
Thank you very
policy,
much.
is
Sorry.
the only way to rectify the problem.
Thank
Thank
you
you
very
very much. I appreciate your time.
Toby Carnes, followed by Manny Patel.
Good evening. I am a West Hollywood resident, and I have gone to this restaurant, and it's very delicious. We are very happy that we're getting revenue from the restaurant, but I believe that there are issues that need to be addressed. First of all, Melrose Avenue is a disaster. I do not believe that any drop-off or pickup should be allowed on Melrose. I think the parking spaces should be returned to people to park there, and it should be required that the drop-off and pickup should be only on San Vicente. It's really a mess. And the Uber and Lyft people apparently park all over the neighborhood, which I know if I see cars outside my house and I don't know who they are and they're just hanging out, it's very discomforting. The noise level, I feel very badly for any of the neighbors who have a lot of noise constantly, and I live very close to Melrose, just a couple of streets down, and I'm very concerned that you're going to allow other restaurants to avoid being responsible for their noise. So I hope that you will please try and address this, because I feel very strongly about this. If there's other restaurants going to be allowed to do this. We love the idea of nice, cool restaurants in our neighborhood, but this one seems to have a lot of issues, and I think maybe closing off the top so it's not open might be something somebody should consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Manny Patel, followed by Pari Tive.
Good evening. Manny Patel, West Hollywood resident. I live down the street on Melrose, just north of on Sweetser. I'm here to support Catch. I'm a huge fan of what they've done with the community and what they've done to take steps to implement like their noise problem and their car service issues, whatever. They've got a long way since they started. And, you know, I personally think we need a place like Catch in this community because it's brought so much attention to West Hollywood in a good way. Celebrities come here all the time, and it's a restaurant we should really, you know, work with. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Pari Tive, followed by Ron Matthew.
Good evening. My name is Pari Tivai, and I live on Rangeley Avenue, right next to Eduardo's house. I didn't prepare to speak tonight, but I decided to do this because I heard the report about the 5 calls into the Code Compliance Department. The fact of the matter is that after the 3-month review, when the Planning Department came here and reported no major issues, we were tremendously disappointed. we had called the code compliance department many, many times, and we heard that the catch restaurant never got a citation. So when you lose your faith in the system, you stop making an effort, okay? So the traffic on Melrose is a serious issue. There is noise from the restaurant and from the street, and the traffic has overflown into our street. So it's really has changed the face of our street and the face of this neighborhood. And there is a lot of positive things about Catch Restaurant, but the negative impacts are all on us, on the neighbors. 12 o'clock at night is really, really late if you're working in the morning. And that's too late to move the operation from Melrose to San Vicente. Now, I have two questions for the planning department. The first one is, I was here with my husband when you guys had the city council meeting when Catch was first presenting and you were going to approve this. There was a promise to have the valet parking on San Vicente. I clearly remember this, and I verified that with few of our neighbors. And then why?
Excuse me, miss, could you address the commission? Your comments have to be towards us.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
So why was it approved for the valet to move to Melrose Avenue? And this is a trend that keeps happening, because I remember when this property was under development, I went to one of the design review meetings, and the owner promised, it was to my question whether there is going to be a public assembly on the top of this restaurant, and he clearly said that no, this is going to be for the staff only. So this is a pattern that we keep seeing, that the developer or the restaurant operator says something, and then a few months later or few years later, we see something that is entirely different. This is not what we expect from a planning department or a planning commission. And then what is going to happen after the 12-month review? I mean, a lot of things that Catch Restaurant is doing right now is very nice. They're bringing the volume down. But what happens after the 12-month review? How can we be assured that there is going to be, measures for sound and traffic? Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Ron Matthew, followed by Mark Birnbaum.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ron Matthew, and I'm a resident on the West Hollywood West on Ashcroft. I'm here to support the efforts of Catch Restaurant, because as I've seen the restaurant from the beginning, I was very excited to go to this restaurant, and I know in the beginning there was some chaos, traffic issues, but I've gone to previous meetings. I've heard them listen to us and address many of the issues. I see what they've done with the parking. I see other businesses in the neighborhood that have worse issues. Some of the bars on Robertson, things like that. The noise, the traffic is much more congested and worse than Catch. And I drive by Catch in the evenings on Melrose, and I don't think it's as bad as what I'm hearing today. So I'm here to support their efforts, because they have been listening to the residents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark Birnbaum. Yes.
Hi, everyone. First of all, I want to thank you all for approving us originally. It's changed my life. I moved here, which is, as a New Yorker, shocking to me, because I'm a New Yorker and that's where my family is. So thank you for approving it, and I also want to apologize that it is not 100% perfect. I don't know that we will ever be 100% perfect, and I don't think I've told Eduardo or anyone that I've ever spoken to that there will never, ever, ever be an issue. We are the largest restaurant in West Hollywood, possibly in Los Angeles. We're 10,000 square feet. We serve almost 1,000 people a day. The number of cars coming in and out is countable, but it's high. When we first came here, it was before really Uber was in LA, so it wasn't such a conversation. I think that this city will start probably adding the conversation of Uber drop-off zones and all those things. We're sort of, in a way, a guinea pig, and this guinea pig is quite big. We have 240 employees that attend this location, aside from all the customers. 7 days a week, we are that busy, which is a miracle for me, and I understand that it aggravates a handful of people. I am thrilled to hear, whether it's 5 or 10 or 20 complaints, the fact that he's gotten 5 in 6 months with an open-air rooftop restaurant, I'm proud of that. I'm also very much able to promise the woman who just came up here that regardless of these planning reviews and the fact that there's really only one person that I've heard from personally as a person who is complaining, which is Eduardo, calling code enforcement to me is sort of a failure for me, because I would like to get a text message or a phone call from any neighbor, and I've offered my phone number at the meeting that we had back in February to people that walk into the restaurant. Mainly it's for positive reasons. I would like to come and have a reservation, I'd like to get in, I'd like to be able to call you. Anybody has my number or a general manager's number, and it's available 24 hours a day. I barely sleep. When I get a phone call, whether it's now or when we're past this process of reviews, I will still be available. I'm here for the long haul. You have my pledge and word for it. I'm going to spend $150,000, possibly $200,000, and I will announce it here in front of everyone on camera, that I am still, for one person, Eduardo, who I believe is hearing music sometimes, he can say all the time, beyond the fact that we have a human being listening before anybody gets a phone call 3 times a night, including later at night, and there is moments where we mess up. There are going to be times where I don't even know why, for the life of me, why any music was on at 12:55 at all, because it's generally off, if not very, very low. It's a mess up. I own it. It happens. I'm very happy that for an open-air restaurant with that many people and this much traffic, we've gotten to where we are, if you don't mind just a few seconds more, because we were a problem. Before the 4 additional spots were issued, it was very hard to contain the double parking and the problems with the Uber and the drop-offs, because these people do not care about your rules, my laws, or the honk, no honk signs. You guys asked me to do a lot of things that are very nice to hear at a hearing, and it sounds good. Respect your neighbors, no honking, be quiet. Not one single person cares about it, just like you don't care about the 35-mile-an-hour zone that you may go 45 miles an hour in, okay? So I did something different. I added a shush man. For $100,000 a year, I have 2 individuals working full-time that say shh to anybody that makes noise, because at least people react to that. And he's big, and he's a little bit scary. So the signs are nice, they're there because I want to make sure I tick that box, but we've gone way beyond that. So the pledge, by the way, the $100,000 that I was referring to, actually it's $150,000, and it's still being engineered, and I'm going to submit it to the city within the next few weeks. We still have some structural engineering to work out, is a glass enclosure over my one area that is not able to be shut by another human being that I pay to do nothing but this. In, out, in, out. Well, there's one area that doesn't have a door, and that's our entranceway. That's where everyone goes in and out. I'm glass enclosing the entire entrance of the restaurant upstairs on the rooftop, because I believe that is 12 o'clock to Eduardo's house. It is high up. He's the one person that I've ever spoken to that has a noise problem, and I'm sure there's others, but that I actually communicate with, and that will be done hopefully in the next 3 months.
Thank you very much.
Question, may I ask a couple?
Absolutely, please.
Okay, I want you to stand there while I ask staff a question also. Is what he's alluding to, Mark, what it had to do with the results of the noise study or something? He's putting in...
Correct. His own study. The additional study that he commissioned after the last review is what triggered this.
And that's what you're referring to?
Yes.
And that's the dollar investment in order to do that additional soundproofing? Okay. Second, again, the parking, valet parking along Melrose was not an approval of this body. It's done separately through a valet permit?
Through a valet license, correct.
Valet license, okay. How come it's on Melrose opposed to San Vicente Boulevard? I realize the entrance to your business is on Melrose,
You've answered your question.
but that's beside the point. Why can't folks who go into the restaurant, they can't walk a few feet to go into a restaurant from San Vicente onto Melrose?
I happen to have Google Earth right here, and I believe...
Can you talk into the mic, please?
I happen to have Google Earth right here,
Yes.
and I believe that along San Vicente, it's a red zone, so that's illegal to put a valet in a red zone.
Who established the red zone, the city?
Yes.
Fire department.
Yes.
Okay, so why can't the city couldn't the city readdress that red zone?
I would have to speak to a transportation engineer or planner to find out what reasons
Yeah.
they were. I mean, red zones are put there for a reason, for safety reasons, so I don't think it was arbitrarily done.
I could probably answer because I asked that question back when. Cedar Sinai is on San Vicente entrance. Firehouse is on San Vicente across the street. They said that is an area where everyone has to be able to pull over for emergency vehicles. It could be the wrong answer, but I will give you one opportunity if you'd like to, for fun, do it. But we can do a social experiment, and I'll just put 12 cars parked in front of that restaurant, and then I'll bring my entire team of 17 people downstairs into the basement and manage the parking. And then you guys can watch the result of Uber drop-offs who could care less, once again, about where the garage is or what a sign says. They're going to go exactly to the address, and they are going to line up and create the greatest bottleneck you've ever seen in this city. Or we can continue with this amazing porte-cochere type of an entrance where I get people in and immediately out, and if you're an Uber, you're going over there. If your person's not there within 1 minute, they get kicked out, or they get a ticket from a person that I'm paying this city to pay to an actual authority figure if they don't listen,
Okay.
as well as the pylons.
Okay, thank you. Where do the cars go when they drop people off?
They go immediately back onto Melrose. They
All
go,
right.
it's a literal drive in, pause, drive out.
And where do they park them?
The valet parkers take the cars and they go around the corner and down to the other side, and they come out San Vicente and they go underground.
Okay.
So there's never a U-turn.
Okay. I'm just going to throw one more thing out. How come we can explore? I understand you answered the question prior that all the businesses, the restaurants, a number of the restaurants use the parking spaces in the evening. That's a given. It's not like you have 12, some have 5. You said Greg, for example. How come you can explore splitting it, taking some of the aggravation off of Melrose and moving on to San Vicente?
It's red zones on San Vicente.
I know,
We
but that's-
cannot put a valet there.
But you don't know the reason for the red zone.
It's on the
something you-
corner, I was just looking at it. I will get Walter Davis or whoever the planning transportation, Bob Chung to look at it, but they're designated red zones for a reason. So we cannot put a valet, the code prohibits that.
Okay.
But again, Uber, who makes their own rules,
Commissioner
would stand wherever they go.
All right, Commissioner Alton.
Mr. Birnbaum, I agree that you're making progress, but I think you can do it a little faster. You've been open how long now?
8 months.
Well, you're making progress, but you got to do it a little faster. Speed it up a little bit.
Is there any
I
advice
also
you could give me
think- I
of
al-
what should be improved more dramatically? Because I am unfortunately in a scenario where, as proactive as I'm being, I can only react to issues that I know of. And
You
for
know of
f-
two
for-
issues, too much Uber traffic and too much noise, and Melrose happens to be abutting a residential district. And I know you're a very big chamber member. You know, I was the chair of the chamber, the president of the chamber, the last year of the last century. That'll get you nothing. The chamber is a very nice organization, but the residents count in this city. And I know what Mr. Giesbrecht means when he says, people look at the signs that said, respect your neighbors, because I witnessed 3 or 4 of them while I was waiting for my car there, screaming at the sign. Why they do that, I don't know, but you put a sign there and they're going to holler at it.
You're
And
absolutely
It's ridiculous. And I don't know when you put your shush person in there, but maybe it was after I saw them screaming at it. Hopefully it was. But maybe
Mr.
you ought to
Chair?
consider building a taller wall up there. 7 feet may not be good enough when you've got open space above the 7 feet.
That's a question, but the answer is the other gentleman that spoke, Darren, who's Eduardo's other neighbor. You heard from Eduardo and the woman next door, and Darren. Darren has never heard a thing, ever. Not one time I've asked him to come and speak on that behalf. Wasn't necessarily comfortable speaking, but my point is, I'm dealing with and I've just discovered the woman next door who has an issue, but I'm dealing with Eduardo because he's the only person that I've ever heard from that has a sound issue. And with respect to
There
my
are more people
business-
here tonight that have sound
Sorry?
issues. You've heard from more people here tonight that have sound issues. And the fact
not
that...
just Eduardo.
More
the
so
fact that
traffic,
people-
though,
wait,
never
wait,
music.
Wait. The fact that more people don't call code compliance and vent their frustrations is true. We hear that all the time because they feel that they don't get relief. It's a matter of fact.
I believe it, which is why we've done the things we've done. The sound study, for example, in the report recommended a leveler. I think you brought up levels. Levels, again, are one of these things that you guys use to regulate operators. My answer to levels were, there's still human error, there are still mess-ups, and there's still screw-ups, okay? Because that's what it is. And I don't know why certain songs are louder, but I could tell you technology from downloading from iTunes and all these other things, like your commercial on your television set. You're watching TV at one level, the commercial comes on, and it blasts, okay? I decided to take it out of the game completely because my terrace has speakers on it. You also brought up the fact about the height of them. Of course, we put them on the floor because that's what we thought would be better. The sound guy said, the reason why you're getting problems across the street at a high level is because it's too low, because it goes right into the wall and reverberates back, and he did an actual diagram of it. He said, you need to put these up high and go down so the reflection is into the people on the other side. So that's why they're high. And it actually eliminated a lot of those issues for ourselves. My point about taking it out of the game was there are no levelers because I turn the music off at 10 o'clock on Melrose. The reason people will hear sounds still is because of, I believe, the only opening from the inside portion of the restaurant, and therefore I'm sealing it for hundreds of thousands of dollars and unfortunately a lot of grief on the structural engineering of it to get it to work so it doesn't collapse or kill anyone. So as soon as that is done, that will be done. And therefore, I will have sealed the only hole that I do in fact have permanently, which is the archway entrance. So I ask you to give me a moment to spend all this money and time to get that done for the one individual that I do know is having a problem. And although I do appreciate that there's people that are complaining, but as a decade operator of nightclubs and restaurants in New York City within buildings where residents are above, I know that if I'm keeping people awake at night, more than one time ever, they are coming to me in their underwear sometimes, in their robe, and screaming at them to get them attention. I have not had a single issue with that yet, and I'm working continuously to get the one done.
Buildings in New York tend to be built a little more solidly than buildings here. It's a fact of life. You know, buildings here are built with stucco and wood. Buildings in New York are built with concrete and steel.
Oh, no, but I'm just saying I've pissed off hundreds of
Commissioner,
neighbors in my life.
Commissioner Hoopen-Gardner had a comment, and then Vice Chair Buckner, sorry.
I was wondering if you'd be willing to take those speakers that are in that entryway that point directly towards Rangeley out until such time as you get your remediation done.
They're not turned on.
They're
not on.
They're not on?
There's no, again, I'm taking the human error out of it. They exist, but they are not on.
Okay.
So it would be irrelevant. And for that reason, because I don't want the human error to then cause a problem that I don't want to cause.
Vice Chair Buckner.
Unfortunately, we live in a congested city and we have businesses near homes. I live 1 block north of Sunset and I hear music and noise and people coming in and out when they're getting into their cars. It's just a fact. And it's annoying sometimes. I get awakened as well. But I think that we have to be reasonable here and realize that there's efforts being made to eliminate a lot of the problems or to reduce them. So I applaud you in that. But I do still think that there's a way to go. And I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but a lot of it is the traffic. That traffic pattern with the drop-off, there's only so much of that you can control. The city has to work with you and in trying to find some way of reducing that noise, the people being dropped off, and the patrons are talking loud when they come out of the restaurant. They're animated and that sort of thing. So I applaud you for doing that, and I do think that there's still other efforts that need to be made. And I would like the department, our staff, to come back to our commission, even though you don't have to do it for 6 months. I'd like to hear a report back how things are going, since there's so much activity and there's efforts on part of the owner to reduce the noise level. That come back to us and let us know how it's going.
So, does anybody else?
That's what I would like.
Does anybody else have a question for the speaker? Well, does anyone have a question for the speaker before we continue?
Yes.
Go for it.
As I commented a little while ago, Soho House had the same problem. They got this sound attenuation situation handled by some company. I suggest you might possibly call them or get in touch with somebody at the city who worked with them and see if you can't do the same thing.
I believe we are using the same one. I know, I'm familiar with their issues. Their issues made me very nervous. I also was very nervous once we opened and I saw that we did have problems immediately. And I'm glad that we were able to rectify the majority of them. I do not think that anyone in this room believes that there will never, ever, ever be a sound or an issue. I mean, again, 1,000 people are showing up. 80% of the cars, that was another question, are Uber after 11 o'clock or so because people are drinking, which is great. Less drunk driving and all that stuff. We appreciate the safety factor, especially when I am liable for every single human being that walks out of that place. And if they drink and they drive and something happens,
There goes your license.
I'm on it. So I love that there's Uber, but I do think that a lot of the noise, because we extended it further down the block, away from the 12 o'clock to Eduardo's house, and the reason why Eduardo's house is a problem is because he's the only house that does not have a building in front of it. Left does, right does, he does not, and it creates something of an amplifier and funnel. So it's an extra bit of figuring out to get, even if it means I'm turning off sound in areas. The yelling and the cackling and the girls that are late at night screaming for God knows what reason, that is the shush man, who does start after 9 o'clock. But I promise you all, I'm here for the long haul. You can say 3 months or 6 months, I have absolutely no issue. The only thing that I'm upset about is when there's that gotcha moment. I figured out a way to, present some evidence to make me an enemy. I'm not. I don't need a 12-month review. I can do this every month. I've got to report 3 days a week, 3 times a day, every single day, going half the time to Adrian because I don't want to bog his inbox up, to show that there's a human being taking a video and explaining what they hear on their noise walk. And it goes right into his backyard and right in front. And sometimes it is missed, and that will happen. But I can tell you that no one is going to walk in here in a year from now or 2 years from now and say, they don't care. They've promised you all these things, and they're over it. It's not going to happen.
Thank you. Do you have a question for the?
Yes, I have one last question. Have you considered, or do you have incentives for your patrons to self-park directly off of San Vicente so as to minimize the valet traffic?
There's no parking really anywhere at all on Melrose, day or night. That's empty
In the
parking.
garage below?
Well, my garage below gets filled up, and then
Okay.
people can self-park downstairs if they want. It's never really been asked, and usually if someone does, it's because they don't want to pay for the valet. The biggest issue is not the people driving themselves. The biggest issue is the Ubers and the sheer volume of them, and even beyond that, the sheer recklessness of them. Reckless by double parking, don't care, standing and idling and waiting, keeping their engines running, showing up and then patrons don't come down for 10 minutes even though they're supposed to be there waiting. And all those things pile things up. No sign on earth is going to stop that. The only way to do it is with a human being who's aggressive with a wand and a yellow jacket so he looks like official. If you go to an airport, right, when you go to drop someone off, remember what do they do? You're stopping there, taking suitcases out, and they're still yelling at you to move along. We're doing an equivalent to that without scaring people. And then on top of it, on Friday and Saturday, which is granted the most busy nights, I have an actual uniformed traffic enforcement cop standing there paid by me to do even more to basically intimidate the Ubers for not, because they don't listen. Say, move along. They put up their windows, they could care less. If we see them parking and idling across the street, we send the parking attendant or my guy who's there all the time across the street to move them along. It is never 100% perfect. Sometimes Eduardo texts me, and it has nothing to do with the music upstairs. It has to do with a car playing music. Across the street, down the block, I don't even know if they're part of our restaurant. It could be, it could not be. He doesn't know, I don't know. By the time we get down there, they might have moved on. These are moments that we're going to deal with forever. However, I am committed, even though it's one person, equally so to commit to solve his one problem. So no, I can sit here and say, I've got thousands of people, I've got hundreds of neighbors, no one cares except one person, so why should I care? It's the opposite of that. I'm doing it as if we have 100 complaints. But it's one person. I will get there. You will see.
Thank you. Any other questions for not the applicant, but for the
I have
speaker?
one more. I'm getting exhausted too, but Uber, tell me about Uber one more time. What is staff going to do about Uber? You're setting up something across the street?
We're setting up a drop-off zone for them
And
to drop off.
with a certain color? Isn't Uber have a color, like a taxi zone or
No,
something?
Uber is an app, Anybody can take their car, sign up for, become a driver as long as they get registered. Then somebody goes on their phone, they call us for the
Right.
Uber,
Right.
they get in, they drive wherever. There's no regulation on them. Like we regulate taxis, there's no regulation on Uber and Lyft. We cannot do anything other than issue parking citations or vehicle code violations to the sheriff's department. That's how they're regulated at the moment. They don't care, they know
But you're
better.
going to try to get them across the street in a zone?
We're just establish a zone for them to come and drop off their patrons and leave.
At airports, which is the beginning of what it's doing. And I think in New York, they're doing it in a couple places. The point of that is if you clear out 4 car lot parking spaces, which I understand people are annoyed by, but those 4 lots now allow you to have an Uber come in and out in an area that's not, say, right in front of someone's house, but in a bigger building or whatever, and therefore, they should be able to come in and out. If you don't have that, they just double park, which causes honking in traffic, because the one person behind is waiting for this Uber to go, and some people will sit on their horn and do not care.
Yeah, I got it. And that's my issue, working those kinks out with the traffic, with, which I want to thank you for the noise. You're investing a lot of money in that. You did the study based on the Soho House study, and you're going to correct the noise situation. And if you just can work a little more to iron out the traffic, parking situation, I'd really appreciate that.
I'm thrilled to do so, and the more space we have that can be for Ubers, and it's not just my business, you've got several businesses on that block, from Gracias Madre to Craig's, who all are dealing with Uber drops in all in the same block, and half of them use our lane because we have the most space now.
Are there
But
any
if
other
there was
questions
another,
for-
it would,
okay,
it would.
thank you. For the speaker? Okay, thank you so much.
You got it.
I know we're supposed to receive and file this, but is there a discussion? Can we discuss or, okay?
I think we discussed it.
I mean, I haven't said my piece, and my piece is the following. West Hollywood is a very active city. It's a very small city, and on Sunset Boulevard, for instance, we do have bars and nightclubs and restaurants, and it is common to hear noise from these uses. However, 8 months ago, and for the last, let's just say, whatever period of time prior to that, there was not an issue in this location. The fact that anyone is losing sleep, in my opinion, is not okay, because this wasn't here 8 months ago. I'm also annoyed that anyone feels like they're not being heard. And I would strongly encourage you to please, if you're having an issue, call the city. That's what we're here for. I mean, I don't work for the city, we're just hanging out, we're here hanging out, but that's what staff is here for. Don't hesitate to call. They will take your complaints seriously, and they will log your complaints. The way I see it here, there are 2 issues. One, noise. The fact that 4 days before this hearing, code enforcement was able to go to someone's backyard and make out the words to the song and identify the song that was being played is an issue. Now, I think, based on the year I was born, I qualify as a millennial, so I have access to Snapchat and Instagram and so on and so forth and whatever. And people patronize that establishment frequently, and we get to see what goes on there. And past 9 p.m., I'm sure at 7 p.m. it's a lovely dinner spot. But past 9 p.m., it's probably, I think, based on what I've seen, just my firsthand knowledge of what I've seen, it's a different environment. So that's part one. Part two is I live outside of the 500-foot radius as well. But I still live right off of Melrose, and I have to drive by the establishment frequently. Issues that I've encountered are people running across the street, people being noisy, people dropping off on either side of Melrose and creating a bottleneck where there wasn't one before. And that, again, to me is not okay. Because, again, West Hollywood is a busy city, we have restaurants, we have bars, we have nightclubs, it's great. But this district didn't have it before 8 months ago, and the people who have lived here before, the residents matter. And so to me, this is not okay. And the owner of the establishment said earlier, it's not gonna be 100% perfect. We'll get close enough, but that's not okay. Because these people have invested time, money, blood, sweat, energy in this community, in their neighborhoods, in their homes, and they deserve better than this. So I am not okay. I'm not okay with anybody coming here complaining and saying that they are losing any sleep at night because a restaurant is playing loudly enough to where you can make out the words, several blocks away. So I just want to make that clear as part of this review, and I want to know that X number of months from now, we'll take another, after the owner of the establishment has taken these efforts to rectify these issues to the best of their ability, I want to make sure that we get to a point where the net effect is zero, because this wasn't here 8 months ago, and it shouldn't have to be like this for the people living in the area now. It's not fair.
So when are they coming back?
So when are they coming back,
When are they
staff?
coming, yeah, when's staff gonna come back to us? Are we gonna wait 6 months, or can they come back, can you come back in 3 months?
We can come back in 3 months.
Yeah, and when you come back in 3 months, by that time, the noise installation will be in effect?
They would have submitted plans and be in plan check. I'm not sure if the actual construction would have started by then, but close to it.
But we'd want, obviously, if you came back, we'd want that to be in effect.
Right.
So then we'll be able to gauge the noise situation.
So what if we gave, I mean, they're in plan check right now for.
No. They haven't submitted yet. They're on.
Submitted yet?
No, they're looking at the engineering for it. They're going to come in and see us, and we have to review it, and then afterwards we'll go through the process.
So, what I want to know, and what would make me comfortable on behalf of the people that we're supposed to represent up here is that, A, this traffic issue is resolved. Either we look at figuring out why there's a red zone on San Vicente Boulevard, if we can move any part of it or all of it to or to find a solution for this, because Melrose is effectively a 2-lane street, and when you have drunk guys and girls and Ubers blocking both sides, and there's a bottleneck when you're trying to get home because of whatever reason, if it's paparazzi X or celebrity Y, it's just, it wasn't there before, and we shouldn't have to pay for it, and that's, as a community, we shouldn't have to pay for it, and that's not okay.
So those are the two issues.
So that and the noise. The
Yes,
noise has,
yes.
the net effect of the noise has to be zero.
And in the meantime, I think the owner is here this evening, Mark, and he mentioned that he has turned down the speakers, so,
This is
so
why-
until this new sound buffer is in place, hopefully he'll continue to be considerate in that way, so that the noise is not emanating into the neighborhood. But I don't think that you can really come back to us until that thing goes into effect, the noise buffer, because that's real key to this. So maybe you can come back in 3 months and give us
Yeah, I mean, we can come back in 3 months, whether it's up or not, and we can come back at 3 months after that. That's not a problem.
Okay,
Or if there's something that happens in between and the commission is aware of that, we can certainly come back at a different time. I mean, we can kind of play it by ear.
So I would feel comfortable if you guys came back in 3 and 6 months. And the other, I would like to know that some thought is being given to, how the parking issue is being handled, because this building wasn't designed for this. When I was on the commission, I was off the commission temporarily for a brief moment of time when we approved something with the liquor, like the commission approved something with the liquor license. I have no idea what happened, but this building was not built for this. So I want to know what the plan is for the parking, because I deal with it as a resident of this city. And I want to know that, something is being done with respect to the sound issue. I'm sorry if I'm going off, but
You're touching it right on. It's the parking and it's the noise. And the noise, we heard what is going to be done about that. In the meantime, I think the manager, the owner, he committed to keeping the sound down until the buffer is put into place. So that's something we're going to monitor this on when you come back. And the second thing is, we're not parking experts here, but you're going to explore how we can alleviate maybe some of the pickup and drop off on Melrose, and we're going to explore San Vicente. We're going to explore the Uber, across the street. So I think we've given good direction this evening, but now we need to see some
Mr. Chair.
further results.
And let's realize, too, that Melrose used to be a 4-lane street, and it's our fault that Melrose is now a 2-lane street, and these businesses had nothing to do with that.
So I have a question about, my understanding with Uber and Lyft is that you have an ability to report bad acting drivers. And perhaps one of the options is for the owner to have his shusher also be a reporter.
Take
Report
names.
on the bad actors from Uber and Lyft with their cell phone, take a picture and say, here's the license number, here's the Uber driver, we're reporting that they're violating this code or doing that thing. And perhaps then the word would get out within the Uber and Lyft community that this is a place where you behave. And that might mitigate some of the challenges.
So, I guess Commissioner Hoopen-Garner, you made a motion technically.
Basically, I wanted to move what you just moved. I mean, I wanted to suggest that we come back per Commissioner Buckner. I was going to move for 2 months review, because, but if they're not going to have construction done, yeah.
3 and 6, I think, is fine.
Right.
You know, this commissioner over here has something.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I just, I'm appreciative of everyone's feedback, obviously. I will say that I have a little bit of misophonia. I've discussed this on the days before, but I really don't like loud sounds. So my hearts go out to you. But I would also say, Mr. Birnbaum, if you are, I'm going to stop short of asking you to state it for public record, lest you never, not have something coming into your phone. But, the owner of a restaurant near your home offers you his personal cell phone number to call and complain, whether it's text or email or phone. I would highly encourage you to take him up on that. It sounds like you are, fairly receptive to people in the neighborhood, and I'm sure they would appreciate that. And, people in the neighborhood also, again, completely empathize with your concerns. Like, if you have an opportunity to directly text or call the owner of the restaurant, I would, advise you to take him up on that. It's just, working collaboratively goes both ways. So I just really want to stress that I think if you can make yourself available to them and are willing to do that, then I think we can start to make some progress on the ground level, no pun intended. But these are people's homes, I get it. So that's all I wanted to say.
And one thing I would like to add again, and I said this before, please do not hesitate to call code enforcement. Again, that's what we're here for. And, it's disheartening to hear that you guys, anybody come out and say, well, we gave up, that's why there isn't a log. Please call, make a log. It's fine. And that's what we're here to receive. So, Commissioner DeLucia, anything?
No, I was going to say the same thing, and you said call the city before. It's actually calling code enforcement, just to have it that goes on record. You should be calling both code enforcement as well if you have the cell number of the owner. So, but you should also back it up with a call to code enforcement, so they're aware what's going on also.
And after hours, the sheriff.
And they call the sheriffs also. What's their number?
We're not going to be able to review this in 3 months if the neighbors aren't calling. That's part of what we're going to get back in our report. So that would be helpful to the commission as far as our review of this project. So.
Any further comments? Okay, with that, let's take a vote. David?
Motion passes unanimous to be brought back.
Thank you very much. We'll take a 5-minute break.
I guess.
All right, if everybody could please take their seats, we are going to be continuing the meeting. Thank you very much. And we are now on item 10A, the zone text amendment for the implementation of the R3CC and R4BC zones. Staff report, please.
Good evening, commissioners and members of the community. My name is Garen Serapian, Associate Planner with the Long Range and Mobility Planning Division. This evening, we're bringing back a zone text amendment and zone map amendment implementing the R3C-C and R4B-C zoning districts identified in the West Hollywood General Plan. This item was continued by the Commission from the May 4th, 2017 meeting. To quickly, briefly summarize the item, the West Hollywood General Plan adopted in 2011 identified land uses that support the overall goals and visions of the community over the next 25 years. And as required by state law, the city's zoning ordinance shall be in conformance with the land uses identified in the general plan. The implementation of the following two new zoning districts was adopted in the 2011 general plan, but needs to be codified into our zoning ordinance. The first is the R3C-C zoning district, which is on the east side of Fairfax Avenue, south of Santa Monica Boulevard. The second is R4B-C, which is on the residentially zoned parcels south of Beverly Boulevard within the city of West Hollywood. And as I mentioned before, the state law requires that the city update the zoning code to conform with the land use designations in our general plan within a reasonable time frame. To quickly go over the goals of the zone text amendment is to make Fairfax and Beverly Avenue a more walkable neighborhood scale district, to incentivize small scale neighborhoods serving commercial uses on the ground floor, ensure commercial storefronts reflect the neighborhood character, and provide additional incentives for making live-work option available for developers. And live-work was something we heard extensively from the community as an interest for that type of use. On the May 4th, 2017 Planning Commission hearing, following the public hearing, the Commission directed staff to bring back two separate resolutions, one for the R3C-C and one for the R4B-C at this meeting. And that's to further make it more clear on the two zones. And just to state that these would be combined once taken to the City Council into one ordinance. Second, the Commission asked to make the following amendments to the R4B-C resolution, which is in Exhibit B of your staff report. The amendments include eliminating the front first-story setback if commercial is proposed on the ground floor, and modifying the maximum lot area from, it was 10,000 square feet to 12,000 to allow for two parcels to be developed. So I could open it up to discussing the two zones, or if you want me to go through the whole presentation again from the last time, so I'll leave it up to the Commission.
Presentation again.
Go ahead.
I don't need the whole presentation again.
I think we're okay.
And as long as you've separated it out so it's clear and you've done those things, then I think we don't really need, I don't need to speak to that again, and I thank you for your hard work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for staff at this time? Commissioner Hoopengard.
A couple of things. The neighborhood serving businesses that you've defined in this new section of the ordinance, can you define what would not be considered a neighborhood serving business?
Sure. So essentially, when we define neighborhood serving businesses, they're really more service-oriented businesses. So, for example, a use like a restaurant over 1,200 square feet, a large restaurant, wouldn't be considered a neighborhood serving use. A community center wouldn't be considered a neighborhood serving use. So it's very selective in the uses in the land use table in section 2, section 3 of the resolution. So we've limited it to, I can read it out, art galleries, artisan, handcraft shops, general retail store, live work properties, personal services, and I believe that restaurants less than 1,200 square feet and outdoor dining less than 250 square feet. So anything outside of this would not be considered a neighborhood serving use, and these uses are also defined in the definition section of the zoning code.
So I guess my question is, and we have this experience already on Melrose, that if you have a retail store where the average price point of the items in that store is $1,000 or more, is that considered a neighborhood serving business? These are some of the things that I guess there's some nuances to what's a neighborhood serving business or not, that, you know, we can have, you know, jewelry store there that's selling, you know, $10,000 minimum pieces. That's clearly not going to be a neighborhood serving business. So who's going to be deciding, how is this going to be enforced if we truly want this to be neighborhood serving businesses? A place where we can stop for dinner, a place where I can pick up, you know, my dry cleaning, things that we who live in the neighborhood would want.
So beyond what's in the zoning code, planning wouldn't be able to dictate the type of use that would come into the space. We'd be able to dictate the size requirements where we have the maximum of 1,200 square feet. So we want to put as much as we can in the zoning code in order to ensure that smaller businesses that may not be extremely high-end, but at the end we won't be able to control the exact type of business moving in. And we wouldn't be able to codify that in the zoning ordinance.
Okay. My next question is, why is a minimum density needed in this zone? And why was 75% chosen?
So the minimum density requirements, typically for the R3C and R4B, they would follow what the minimum density is for the R4B district and the R3C district, and that's a 90% minimum density. We came up with a 75% density if commercial is on the ground floor. Because there is going to be the commercial with the 75%, it would be a project that's feasible. And so that was done through some calculations we did, and based on that study with the 75%, it could be a feasible project.
I'm trying to fit that in with the zoning of live, work, et cetera. And so my question is, in your images that you just showed us, you showed us some very cute 2- and 3-story live, work type units, but this proposal would allow for 5-story mixed use, and that's not the pictures that you showed us. The pictures that you showed us are the live, work that this, I believe, was intended to be via the general plan process. As a friend of mine likes to say, if you offer a kid 3 scoops of ice cream, or you offer them a choice of 1 scoop of ice cream, I don't know many kids who aren't going to go for the 3 scoops of ice cream. So if this ordinance is adopted and this becomes an option to build 5-story mixed use, the live-work option will not be chosen. And yet this is property that we have clearly identified as some of our last truly live-work viable space. So I'm trying to understand why we're moving forward with this, again, in the absence of the results of the study about live-work, which, do we have a timeline on that?
I think we discussed this a little bit in the last hearing. That's a separate item that was requested by the council to look at incentives that might better facilitate live work in other zones where it's allowed. But the language that's included here is intended to facilitate live work within the requirements that we currently have. If changes are proposed in the future, they would certainly impact live work possibilities in this neighborhood, but the projects are separate. Our task here is to bring the zoning ordinance into conformance with the general plan, and the live work study could build upon that in the future.
But if everything's already been developed as a 5-story multifamily, there's pretty much no go-backs, correct?
Sure, development can proceed at its own pace. That item is on the department's work plan, and I don't have a precise date about when that will come back to the commission at this point.
Okay. I've just checked my last questions. I do have some, I think there's Garen, we talked about some typos. There's a reference to 19.36.130 and calls it the live-work ordinance, but in fact, I think it's 160, and that's in both versions.
Yes, that is correct. Thank you for bringing that up. So for both resolutions, section 7, the last sentence under 1 needs to read see section 19.36.160 for regulations for live-work facilities. I believe currently it says 19.36.130, but it needs to be 19.36.160. Thank you.
And so the comments that we had a month ago about lot ties and limiting lot ties on this space, that was not incorporated in any of this revised language. Was there a particular reason?
So I don't recall that was the last direction from the last meeting, but we believe that the maximum lot area will cover the lot tie issue to ensure that not too many lots are tied together in a large development.
The maximum lot. And where is that?
So the maximum lot area is under section 4, table 2-3, the second line in the chart, maximum lot area. So for the R4 BC, we have 12,000 square feet, and the R3C-C, we have a 10,000 square foot maximum lot area.
And we said that would still allow for 3 lots to be tied.
Yes, currently the reason we came up with the 3 lots for the R3C-C was there are parcels that are 10,000 square feet, so we wouldn't be able to minimize anything less than 10,000.
And we did address it for the R4 last time. We raised that from 10,000 to 12,000.
Yes, that's correct.
Any other questions for staff? All right, hearing none. Do we have any speakers on this item, David? None? Okay. With that, we can close the public hearing. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, so I have so I'm going to separate this into kind of the two disparate parts of this particular item. So one is R4BC, which is Beverly. I don't have any comments on that. I think there are many things that Commissioner Hubengarner said that I'm in agreement with and that I have questions about. And I think as related to R3C-C, the east side of Fairfax, those are twofold. One, we only have 3 zones in the city that are currently even have the possibility of allowing for live work. And I think given that is something that council has asked staff to look into, I would really like to see the results of those incentives before we make a decision about this. I understand that the intention of this is to bring this particular zone into conformance with the general plan, but I think my second point here is that is what's being recommended, this R3C-C zone, what is best for this part of the city based on kind of the broader, tenets of the general plan. I think my biggest concern with the way that this is being zoned now is that it currently affords for, I think, 25 feet and 2 stories. But given the lot sizes and given what we know about density bonuses, what we can expect to get is like 35 feet and 3 stories. And I think then we start to talk about and face, a situation in which we're getting buildings that are actually much bigger than what was ever intended for this particular part of Fairfax. It doesn't mean that I'm, opposed to changing, the zoning for it. I think now it's CC1, and I don't think we've had any general plan amendments yet this year, have we? We're allowed
No, we haven't.
4
No.
per year? We have not had any yet this
yeah.
year. I mean, I would actually, where I'm at right now, and I'm open to discussion, is to actually continue this
Continue
part.
the second part.
Continue the first part, R3C-C.
R3C-C,
Yes.
that's what I meant.
Continue the first part until we have more information from staff about
Are you gonna
the
move the other one?
live work, and then also my motion would include moving the second part of it and approving that as is. So I would like to,
Sorry,
It's okay.
I just have a question. We have a speaker after we close the public hearing. Are we allowed to? We can, okay.
Yeah, I think if someone came to speak, you could, before you take any action.
I was gonna say, yeah, we
from
can
them.
hear public speaker before I move, but that's where I'm at, just letting you all know right now.
I'm going to open the public hearing again for a quick second. With that, I would like to have El McCabe please speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioners. I didn't sign up to speak earlier because I wrote the letter that hopefully all of you got, but I didn't hear any of you mention any of its contents in the questions you raised or address the issue of those of us that live on Orange Grove directly behind the parcel that's being impacted, which I'm disappointed in because there's a number of us, as I wrote to you all about, that will be significantly impacted by this development, particularly if it goes to 3 or 4 stories, in terms of our privacy, in terms of our property values, in terms of the potential for additional noise. Chair, I appreciated your comments earlier about the residents near Ketch. We also would be residents near this change in a zone that has, for a long period of time, served the community quite well, including with the current business there, but would dramatically change if it goes to 3, 4, 5 stories, the nature of those of us that live directly behind it, including myself and 5 other owners of our unit, and what is supposed to be a new development next to us. So that I hope before you make the decision to pass this and send it on to council, that you'll in fact reflect upon the impact on those of us that made a conscious choice to move to Orange Grove with an understanding of what the nature of that area would include and the impact of that decision on our property. Thanks.
And with that, I will close the public hearing again. Any other comments?
No.
Commissioner Hoover?
I would certainly second Stacy's motion. I think the Beverly property is, I don't think we even have any conversation about that, but I think the Fairfax has a tremendous number of issues that need to be addressed before we move forward.
And we did tweak the Beverly property at the last meeting. We made a couple of changes which have been incorporated into the resolution to council. So I'm supportive of holding off on the R3C and moving the R, what is it, 4C?
R4, yeah.
Yeah, C1.
R4BC.
Yeah. So I'm in favor of your motion.
Any other comments? Oh, go ahead.
I just noticed Bianca reacting to this, and if you have something that you want to share with the commission, I would welcome it. Is there something that we're not paying attention to that you would like us to think about?
No, I think the study of how the city might better facilitate live-work opportunities will certainly be a review of our existing codes that already allow for it. I think that it's hard to say what the outcome of that study will be. It may or may not have a significant impact on what would happen in this zone. So I guess maybe the reaction you saw was it would be helpful if the commission is comfortable moving this forward to bring the general plan and zoning ordinance into conformance. If you are not at this time, of course, we're happy to do further study and come back to you. I think that was the reaction that you saw, but we are happy to follow the will of the commission.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I have a
Sorry,
comment.
Jerry.
Yeah, I guess I want some clarification on the issue with R3C, because the last time we discussed it, I felt thoroughly, and discussed it in light of the live-work situation, and there were comments about the removal of the parking requirement, but that was the city's effort to possibly bring live-work to the site. So I don't see anything there that limits the possibility of live-work development. We can't force a developer to develop that, but there are incentives already in place. And then we also talked about Fairfax being a very wide boulevard and trying to hold that edge and the higher height in relation to the residential in the back it didn't go higher than the residential that is proposed for development in the back area. So I'm not quite sure why we're reviewing this again.
Well, I don't think we got to fully kind of discuss it. I think we had a lot of discussion at this about this at the last meeting. I think the issue is that as of right now, what this really is it's a mixed use overlay. Let's just call it what it is. It is, and it's a zone that doesn't currently exist. So I would like to wait to see. We have 3 pockets in the city that currently accommodate live work. And if a developer doesn't have to build live work, or there aren't incentives in place for that to happen, I don't believe the way that this is proposing to be zoned, that they will. Then I don't want to eliminate those kinds of opportunities, because those pockets are already so tiny. They're Fountain and Laurel. They're Doheny and someone help me with the cross street. I know one of you knows it.
What is, I don't know, I'm trying to figure out what that
And
third
then
zone
this
was.
section on Fairfax, and I think, unless we can make live work equivalent to mixed use, I just think we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. My thought is to wait, and I'd also love to see recommendations from staff about, what our alternatives are if we choose to not zone it as R3C-C, which, as I understand it, also historically was actually added at the very last minute to the general plan. It was added kind of at the 11th hour. So being mindful of really what is the best zoning for this, strip of street for the city. And I don't think that R3C-C is the answer.
That could require a change in the general plan. which
Right,
you're
general
just-
plan
you're
amendment.
So let me ask you a question. What is the third zone? Does staff know? Because there's 3 live-work zones in the city. I'm not clear of the third one.
I don't think it's a zone, it's just an
Yeah.
area where
And then
there's.
I do want to ask a question before, because I'm sort of supportive of this, but I do want to ask a question. What is different about waiting on the R4, is it R4, R3? What's the difference of waiting on the R3 versus the R4? You want to move one, but not the other. I don't see what I really don't, out of courtesy, I wanted to go along with it, but I don't really see the real difference, why we're moving one and holding off on the other, when they're both live work, and everything is, that we're describing in these resolutions. The only thing that's different in these resolutions are a couple of call-outs in the table itself, having to do with setbacks and et cetera. But all the other language is identical, actually, in both resolutions. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
So I'm not sure why we would.
Well, but the
They're very-
resolutions are for completely
they're very different properties.
Completely different.
They're not
pieces
different, the
of
resolutions.
city.
They're exactly the same.
No, the properties in question are very, very different.
Are you saying that you don't believe that we should apply some of the same language to both zones? Is that what you're?
Correct.
Hence the
That's
separate
why we asked to break
resolutions.
them out and separate them a month ago, because we
Okay, so-
felt that
and
there
the way
should
they
be
came
very
back,
different.
they're still identical.
Exactly.
So
And
that's your concerns.
those concerns were not incorporated in these resolutions.
Okay, I just want to understand that.
Any other comments? All right, do we have a motion on the floor? Or do you want to formally make a motion?
Sure, I'd like to move to continue, or I don't know if we would be continuing it, to hold off on making a decision about the first part, the draft resolution PC 17-1197, until we have a report from staff on the live work that's on the work plan right now, and move the second part of this item, which is the draft resolution PC 17-1202, as is.
Do we have a second? Oh, so there you go. And then, okay. And can we do that with one motion? Okay, thank you, City Attorney. So if there's no further discussion, let's call the question. Missing one.
Who's missing?
Oh, you.
Not me
you.
this time.
You made the motion.
Motion passes unanimous. There is no appeal process since this will go to recommendation to City Council.
Thank you very much. And now we will go on to item 10B, 1221 North Detroit Street.
A mess here.
Good evening, Commissioners. Antonio Castillo, Associate Planner with the Community Development Department, Current and Historic Preservation Division. The item before you this evening is a request to demolish both existing vacant residences on a single parcel and construct a new condominium development with 5 market rate units over a fully subterranean parking garage. Proposed is a 3-story, 5-unit building with similar floor plans in alternating patterns. The units are townhouse type with a shared subterranean parking garage. All units average approximately 1,300 square feet in size and include 3 bedrooms, 3.5 baths. The design is straightforward, identifying each townhouse, providing a repetition of forms along the length of the project. The front of the project is broken down into 2 separate forms over an identifiable base. The units are finished with wood veneer on the exterior, emphasizing rhythm and providing modulation. The design includes a large balcony on each unit, alternating from 2nd to 3rd floor. This alternating pattern creates a visual interest with inherent order. The project is designed to be a high-achieving green building project with a minimum of 90 points under the city's green building point system. And as a high-achieving project, the applicant is applying an incentive to divide the required 500 square foot common open space into private open spaces for each unit. Each unit will provide an average of 852 square feet of private open space within balconies on the 2nd, 3rd, and within private rooftop patios. The parking garage will be accessed from a single driveway, generally located in the same location where one exists today. The subterranean parking garage will provide 12 spaces, including 2 for guests. The approximately 6,700 square foot lot is located in an R3 zone on the west side of Detroit Street, just south of Fountain Avenue between Lexington Avenue. The site and its surrounding parcels along Detroit are also zoned R3C and developed with a range of single-story and 3-story residential buildings. The properties to the east along Formosa are zoned R3B and mostly developed with 2.5-story buildings. The property immediately across the street is the rear of the Ralph's parking structure, a 2-level parking structure, which fronts onto La Brea. The project was reviewed by the Planning Commission Design Review Subcommittee in December and again in February of this year. Overall, the committee members believe that the project was well designed and were supportive of the project's compatibility with the neighborhood. Staff received 1 late correspondence, or one that was not included in your staff report. It was an email from a resident, Rain Phillips, who could not attend this evening. He expressed concerns with the construction in the immediate area and for that reason opposing this project, but with no specifics on the project itself. In conclusion, it's staff's assessment that this proposal is well suited for the site and the surrounding neighborhood. The project will provide 5 residential units, a net increase of 3 housing units for the city's housing stock. The project provides a high-achieving green building design, is complementary to the context of the neighborhood, and meets the intent of the development standards for residential buildings in this zoning district. As proposed and as conditioned, the required findings for the development permit, demolition permit, and tentative tract map can be satisfied. And therefore, staff recommends that the Commission approve the project request, subject to the findings and conditions provided in your packet.
Thank you very much. Any questions for staff at this time? All right, hearing none. We will open the public comment. We have, the applicant's representative has up to 10 minutes if they need it. 5 minutes for rebuttal if you need that.
For the record, my name is Margaret Taylor of Apex LA, representing the applicant in this case. Thank you very much for having us here this evening. We're very excited about this project. We're very happy to be at this point. And we'd also like to very much thank Mr. Antonio Castillo for his tremendous work with us as a planner with the planning department and getting us to this point. We've really taken this responsibility seriously of having an opportunity to do a project in this neighborhood. And in doing so, we took a lot of pains to be respectful of what we have perceived and concerns from the community in general, and we put those into the design of this building. So for example, knowing that the community really wants to minimize tandem parking, every single parking space is side by side, and we have one additional guest parking space above code required, so we have 12 spaces instead of 11. That was one of the things we definitely wanted to achieve. Second is that there is, when possible, we try to minimize the height. So the height allowed in the zone is 45 feet. We are actually only 40 feet, and that includes our stairwell. So the roof deck is only at 30 feet. And we're 3 stories, not 4 stories, and we feel that we've been able to achieve a high quality of design with a high quality of living condition within that envelope, and we feel that that's an envelope that's appropriate for this neighborhood. In terms of additional considerations, every single unit has what we call a wet room on the first floor, and that is a room that we see as being both not only meeting the disabled accessibility standards on the first floor, but also making sure that each and every other unit is fully adaptable, and that is a nice multi-purpose opportunity for people. If there is a person who needs accessibility, that they have that on the first floor in every single unit. But in addition to that, it can serve as other purposes for tenants. So we found that that was a nice creative solution. In terms of working with city staff, this has been very vetted by all of our team in terms of our civil engineering. So full stormwater management is already incorporated into this design. Fire department requirements, transportation requirements have all really been very proactively incorporated into this design. So what you're seeing will be what is built. And in addition, all of those team members have reviewed the proposed resolutions, and we have no concerns or questions regarding the conditions of approval. We feel that they're appropriate and we can abide by them and comply with them. There is only one small note, and that's why we gave you your plan set today. Our architects, in reviewing the staff report and the plans, realized that on the 3rd floor patio, they had not included the covered patio on the 3rd floor into the floor area calculation. So that meant, as necessarily changed a couple of numbers. One is our it changed on our title page. The floor area for the building is 7,485. Our 3rd floor area page changed to 2,516, and your pages in your packets reflect these numbers. So if the commission so desires to approve the packets in front of you, they are correct. And the last number is the average unit size is 1,497, which is still within the code allowed 1,500. So that one change reflected in those numbers on the other pages. Otherwise, and I think that in terms of the resolution, there's only 2 paragraphs and one finding on each resolution where it mentions the average unit size. I think that that might be amended if it's your wish to mention the 1,497 average unit size. In terms of the concern about construction, we are very aware of any concerns that people have about construction. We have another project that did go through the city of West Hollywood, and we started construction on that location. And what we did was we had a meet and greet right out in front of the site where we stayed open on a Saturday, and we brought the contractors there, we brought the property owner there, we put out all of our contact information, and we really wanted to establish, let people know what was going on, let people know what the timeline was, see if they had any practical coordination ventilation concerns and also make sure they had our contact information. And that's just something we're doing proactively as part of the construction. And then I believe that that's our primary comments. Other than that, we really are appreciative of being here in the city and a part of this process.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Don?
Just a detailed question. I understand you increased the square footage. It was 1314, and it went up to 1497?
Yes, correct.
And what was the other?
In terms of on the title page, the third floor count, that whole column, we just added in the patio, so that's up to date now. And then
That add a lot of square footage, or?
yeah, it added patio screen. So if you want to know the actual
Yeah, I'm just
number,
wondering. Yeah.
if you go to page 1A1.4, there's a line item in each of those tables for each unit that shows the patio.
Okay.
And that's the actual amount of additional square footage on each unit that was incorporated into the unit square footage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Commissioner Hoopengarden?
I'm a little confused about the roof decks.
Yes, ma'am.
On A16, you have the roof schematics, and the roof planter is a rather narrow border around the patio. But when I go to the landscape designs on L01 and L11, I see plantings that cover pretty much half of the roof. So I'm wondering which is the correct design?
In terms, there's a difference between the planters area and then there's permeable paving that can absorb, I think, on a part of the roof deck area. So part is the floor, I guess, of the roof deck area, and part is the planter area. The planters are part of our stormwater management program, so we use those for water filtration. And then the planting area, see the architect's drawing for more information. And I might walk over to the architects and see if they want to add more detail in that response.
On A16, it looks like roof deck, and it says roof deck.
Yeah, I think it's the material on the roof deck, but I will confirm that.
No, it looks like to me.
Hi,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
hi, my name is Kim and designer of the project. And actually for the roof deck layout, A1.6 drawing is correct. Before we proposed it as
L0.1?
Yeah, L1.1, but however, this does not meet with city's green building point requirement, so that we changed it into A1.6. And we asked our landscape designer to revise like landscape drawing, but because he is in hospital now because he has accident, so our point for the green building and our layout is all based on
A1.6?
Yes, A1.6.
Okay.
And even for the render and those like physical models is all based on A1.6.
So you're saying staff directed you to change this? Well, I didn't quite understand what you said.
For the green building point, first we were trying to get a like 6 point from the vegetate roof deck things, but however, our like L1.1, it cannot get us those 6 point, so we did not apply it for the 6 point, and we did apply from other items for 6 point.
That's kind of disappointing because I rather like more of a green roof, and I, as a buyer, would like the fact that it would give me privacy. You've created, with that original design, some nice privacy so that each patio is kind of separate from the others.
Okay, so for the private things, we did care about privacy also, so that's why all the corner we have roof planter box in the corner. So actually, it has like more than 2 feet 6 wide roof planter. See the A1.6? So it's kind of the buffering zone in between our roof deck and the neighbors.
But there's no buffer now between the two neighbors, and I guess also, this is just would be, right, on the roof, you're sitting next to each other, as opposed to, in the original design, you actually got sort of separate rooftop living rooms. And from a noise perspective, I would view the original design as more, back to our conversation earlier this evening, would be more conducive to a smaller, more, if you will, family environment, as opposed to a big roof deck where you could conceivably have larger events and hence have problems with the neighbors with noise. So that's why I didn't understand the disconnect between the two drawings, so thanks for your clarification.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant?
I also got a clarification from the gentleman who's been working with fire department. As I mentioned, we're pre-vetting all of this with the different departments, and they also had concerns about the number of barriers on the roof for a fire department access point of view. That was also part of the reason why. Yeah. Oh, I just wanted to also point out for the Green Building Point program, we did have a LEED certified architect make sure that the points were accurately applied and can actually be done.
Understood. All right. If there are no other questions, you can be seated. And David, do we have any other speakers? No. So I don't think you have any rebuttal.
Okay, thank you.
Unless you want to rebut your own statement. So with that, we'll close the, do we have any other questions for staff? So we can close the public hearing and go to discussion. Anybody want to start?
Well, I did have one question for staff.
Oh, you do have one here.
Sorry. This is a 3-story building, which would be 35 feet tall. And my understanding of staircase, what do you call them, staircase?
An architectural projection?
Yeah, projection, thank you. Was that they were limited to 15% of the rooftop. And I was curious as to how that was, where's that shown and where's that calculation and how does that work?
The 15% projection is above the maximum height allowed. In this case, the entire building is below the maximum height allowed for this zone.
So it's not based upon the number of stories, it's based upon the zone?
Correct. Well, above the maximum height of the building allowed for that zone.
So they're within it. Commissioner Ultra, I think you made a motion. Is there a second? All right, is there any other discussion before we move?
I just want to thank the applicant for paying attention to the detail on this project, and I guess staff on that, what they were talking about, you guys agree with?
Okay. Before we vote, we have one more comment.
Yes.
Oh, from actually Rogerio and then.
Yeah, so my comment is just to fellow commissioners, because I saw this happen on the project at 8713 Beverly, where the developer promises things to the community but doesn't deliver. And if you turn to page A1.2, they say, in an effort to create a positive environment for the community, we will include a welcoming front yard which will invite community members to interact with one another. This also happened on 8713 Beverly, where they talked about creating this amenity to the community that really wasn't there. When you look at the landscape plan, L-0.0, there's really a blockade. There's no place in front of this property where the community could actually gather. That's not necessarily saying it's wrong or it's poor, but I'm kind of frustrated with developers and architects saying that they're going to deliver something and then they don't deliver it. So if you're going to create a space where community members can gather with the people who live at this property, then let's try to do that, because currently what's in this plan doesn't do that.
Where are you reading?
You said L0.0?
Just go A1.2.
A1.2 of the new one that they provided?
In your new set, that would be sheet A0.5.
A0.5, yeah.
A0.5.
It's the third paragraph down. And then in that same, they talk about the roof decks and the roof gardens being private. But when you look at the alternating plan, one side is private, the other side is not. I don't necessarily think it's an issue for this property, because the property to the north will eventually develop up, and actually the reverse might happen, is that the neighbors next door will be looking down into these roof decks. So again, I'm looking at the fine print and kind of understanding that there seems to be this pattern where developers and architects promise and then don't deliver, and I just want us to be aware of that and catch that in the future. If they're going to develop a project that's going to have an amenity for the community, I want to see that amenity. I want to see how it benefits. And these developers and architects understand the community that they're building in. And we do want amenities. We are a small community. We do need pocket parks. We need these very simple things that, if they come to the table with these proposals, could alleviate half the issues that they're experiencing with the community.
And I would actually totally agree with you, because I wanted to know where the bench is, because they discussed that there's a bench outside for everybody to sit on, but
No bench.
but there's no bench, and there is no real community area for gathering.
Who are we
And-
talking about gathering? Are we talking about people that live in the building, that purchase?
Either way.
Or are we talking about,
Either
so,
way.
Implied in their statement that the front yard, which will invite community members to interact with one another. So it's vague. It's vague, but it implies that there's this gathering space.
and I appreciate you pointing that out. And however, when this plan is executed, what are we going by to execute it? We're going by the ordinance, and the resolution, and also, are these plans, and they have to go follow these plans?
Yes, it's a resolution and the stamped plans that are before the commission tonight.
But these plans are more used for the technical aspects, not for that.
This isn't the building set, this is the planning set.
Right, but what we do is we'll match that up when they go through the building permit entitlement process. We make sure that they match the plans that went for
Right.
planning.
Right, but not the pretty words here.
Correct.
I mean, but I appreciate what you're saying. If you know that, is there a bench on here too, somewhere? Can we reopen the public hearing to hear that? Can you tell us about the bench?
So the history behind the pretty words is that staff did start asking for a sustainability kind of community impact statement. So that's part of what creates the impetus behind the language. There is a lot of heart behind it, I can tell you that. In terms of the community space, part of what did drive the front yard is that we have, again, stormwater management. So we had to put in some planters, but what we did, we're still kind of working with that same spirit of wanting to, first of all, make sure that there is an openness to the street. We weren't specifically trying to say we were creating a public park in the front yard so much, but what we did want was that there is an interface with the street where there's a pedestrian scale, and the planters, when we were talking about it, and even with the design review subcommittee, is that it actually is kind of friendly to being able to sit on and relax or talk to people as they're walking by the street. So we wanted to make sure we weren't a prohibitor to people being and interacting with each other and feeling welcoming with the landscape design, and not having, even if we needed the stormwater management, not having those planters too high and prohibitive, but bringing everything down and creating a kind of welcoming space.
Okay.
Thank you. Any further comments before we close the public hearing back up? and vote again?
Just that I'm a little confused about some of the planting that they were talking about removing in the permit. They're talking about removing a tiapuana tree and replacing it with a jacaranda, but in the plans they're talking about the existing street trees being a cassia and a jacaranda, and so there's all this conversation about what's being removed and replaced, but it's not very consistent. And given that this is what we're approving, I think it's important that we're accurate.
So the jacaranda is retain and protect in place. The other tree, we understand from street trees that there's a virus that the certain trees are susceptible to, and that other tree is determined to be one of the trees that has to be removed and will be replaced in the parkway. In terms of the existing species, I apologize if there's an inconsistency between the staff report and our landscape designer in terms of the existing tree species.
And the only other question I would have is, I mean, I like the idea that you're adding a lot of green to this, et cetera, but I do question some of the materials, because aeoniums, for one, will get very leggy very quickly, especially on the north side of a building. They're a full sun-loving plant, and you've got a whole edge that's full of aeoniums, and they're going to be leggy and nasty looking pretty darn fast. So there's a couple of things. You've got sedums, all in the parkway. Well, I don't know about
Detroit precisely, but in my neighborhood, the dogs will have those destroyed in about 20 minutes. So those are just some thoughts about, it looks pretty on paper, but reality is what really matters. And so I'd like us...
Reality bites, right?
Yeah.
We'll find out.
Sounds like some sage advice. So the language in the resolution is that we do coordinate, we have a landscape plan that's approved with the cities and the city's landscaping program, and is respects drought-tolerant planting material. If you have practical advice, this is part of what's fantastic about the public process, is we'd rather know that before the dogs get too interested in the plants or et cetera. So we're very open to any suggestions that you may have. I think the language as written in the resolution covers your intent. And again, please feel free to forward any comments.
And I just have one last design question. The master suite has a shower that I couldn't exactly measure, but it doesn't look like it's more than 3 feet wide. And I'm curious as to how that's going to work.
Well, we have the wet room as well, and I think that there's a 2.5 bathroom, so I think there's a variety of
But the
bathing
master
options.
suite, the shower doesn't look like an
It's big
average
enough?
person could even fit in it.
But 3 feet.
I think
Yeah.
that might inhibit certain people from renting it or buying it, and I think they're asking for a trap app. So it inhibits the sale.
Let's talk into the mic.
It doesn't necessarily recommend its approval.
Of course, but I'm a citizen in this community, and I would like to see successful projects. And so the more successful, the more saleable they are, it's a win-win. So my comments are partly, I'm not going to deny or approve based upon it, but my question is that it looks, combined with no walk-in closet in a master suite, that's going to be a very expensive condo. Just as a buyer and as a citizen, I say, that looks a little weird.
I think that extent of mandating design is contra to First Amendment rights.
We appreciate the
No,
input.
and,
Yeah, we have the architects here, they're taking notes, so thank you.
If the developer wants, as far as what goes on the inside, if the developer wants to shoot themselves in the foot, that's on them.
They're right.
How big?
Not to say that you are.
How
but-
big is it? No.
Just kidding.
Just take a look. Can we move the question? Or?
Yeah, any other questions? No? Close the public hearing. Let's call the question. David?
Motion passes, 6 ayes, 1 no.
Thank you very much.
Oh, wait, we have an appeal process. The resolutions the Planning Commission just approved memorializes the Commission's final action on this matter. This action is subject to appeal to the City Council. Appeals must be submitted within 10 calendar days from this date to the City Clerk's office. Appeals must be in writing and accompanied by the required fees. The City Clerk's office can provide appeal forms and information about waiver of fees.
Thank you very much. We will go on to item 12, unfinished business. There is none. Item 13, excluded consent calendar. There is none. Item 14, items from staff, planning manager's update.
Nothing for tonight.
Nothing for tonight. Thank you. Public comment. Do we have any speaker slips? None. Items from commissioners. Commissioner Hoopengarner? We'll go.
None.
Commissioner Caballero?
Yeah, I do. I'm going to read something out that I put together. I've been working with staff on this. As many know, I teach a design studio at UCLA Extension's Master's Interior program for the last 5 years. My studio focuses on the development of a multi-use building which incorporates a sustainable restaurant, a community gathering facility, and a produce market which is paired with a hydroponics grow center. Hydroponic grow centers are quickly becoming a viable and smart way to grow produce. Countries like Sweden, Norway, Switzerland, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand are realizing the fact that grow centers offer a more efficient way to feed our communities. As Dr. Desmonier from Columbia University states in his book, The Vertical Farm, traditional gardening and agricultural methods over the last 7,000 years have done as much to destroy our natural environment as the last 100 industrial years. Dr. Desmonier suggests that the only way we are going to reverse our global environmental situation is to allow all our agricultural lands to revert to their natural environments and to bring produce production into our urban centers. Doing so will allow us to significantly reduce the carbon footprint associated with production. Pairing a grow center with a restaurant, another one of the most wasteful industries found in our communities, makes for a smart and thoughtful way to lead our community into the next chapter of existence. In light of this work and research that I continue to do, I have asked staff to investigate whether our current codes do or do not support this type of use, and if not, how we can adjust our codes so that such a facility could be built. Currently, Brooklyn is the only other community that I know is considering a project like this, and they have 100,000 square feet that they're considering doing a produce hydroponics production center. I have, if any of the commissioners, any community members, any staff, I have 5 years of case studies of buildings like this, projects in West Hollywood where we have actually implemented this type of program and can prove how it works. But I would like to see us, especially given what happened today with the Paris Accord, I would like to see us make a step towards being more green, and this could be a way that the Planning Commission could possibly consider
Wonderful.
this.
Thank you very much. Vice Chair Buckman?
Thank you.
Commissioner Olson? Commissioner DeLucia?
Are we giving direction to staff about this? Or is it, I'm not clear.
I've had a conversation with Scott Lunsford about it, and he said he was going to bring it up at last week's staff meeting, Wednesday afternoon, and he was going to report back, but I haven't heard back.
Okay, because if you have an interest in that, which it is very interesting, I would like at maybe some point staff can come forward and maybe help us initiate something.
Sure, we'd be happy to.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome.
And I just want to thank our newest members at the other end, Lynn and Rogerio, for your contributions so far. They've been very insightful and very, I think, helpful and to the public and to your fellow commissioners. So I thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jones?
I just wanted to thank Rogerio and Lynn. I'm just going to call you by your first names. I'm sorry. It's so long to just do the commissioner.
Yeah.
My commissioners for a great second meeting. It's great to have you here. And I also just wanted to say for public record, even though of course there's like nobody but us left here now, that I will always take a meeting from anybody in the community. So please, I travel a lot, but time permitting, I don't think I've ever had to say no to a meeting with someone. So if you want to meet about an item, something going on your street or in your community, please email me.
And I have nothing to say, so with that, we will adjourn to the next meeting of the Planning Commission, which is on June 15th. Thank you.
Thank you.